Hello and welcome to Wisdom Bites. Hope you're well. Thank you once again for joining us. Very much appreciated. And in today's video, I'm going to give you an update from the last video when I gave you the targets for March. Here and here. Also in the last video, I actually showed you this inverse head and shoulders pattern, and we were just about here in that video. I said that once we break this head and shoulders pattern at the neckline here, then we'll be on our way to the first target of $58,000. I'll give you an update on that. Also, what is forming on this chart is a chart pattern I've shown you many times before. That's the cup and handle pattern. And once we break out of this neckline here, this is where we're expecting the next move towards our second target for this month, which is the R2 line at 71,000. I'll give you an update on that as well. I'll also show you this logarithmic Fibonacci rainbow chart, which is predicting something completely different to what everybody else is predicting, and we need to be aware of this. And is this bars pattern from 2013 predicting the current trajectory of the current bull market? And for the longer term, I'm going to show you the hash ribbons, how they've been absolutely accurate in predicting the beginning of each bull market and the end of the bear markets. And finally, if you had 3 minutes to address the world, what would you talk about? And if that sounds interesting, then without further ado, get yourself a cup of tea, sit down, relax, and let's get cracking. As usual, before we do that, a polite reminder that I am not a financial advisor and this video is only for educational purposes only. So please make sure you do your wider research before making any investment decisions. Now, with that out of the way, let's get naughty, have a Snickers bar, and let's get cracking. Okay, let's start off on the 4-hourly chart. And in last week's video, I mentioned to you that we're having an inverse head and shoulders developing here, and this is where we were exactly this point here. This was the inverse head and shoulders pattern that was developing, as I mentioned in the last video, and we were at this point, and I said quite clearly that once we break the neckline of this inverse head and shoulders at this point, then that will be the catalyst for moving up to the first target that I gave you for March, which was $58,000, and we've now come up to $58,000 there, as you can see. And if we put on the pivots line, which is where I got the targets from, you can see quite clearly that the two targets I gave was R1, which is the $58,000 mark, and the R2, which is the $71,200 mark. And as I've mentioned in many videos now, whenever we come up to these targets, you can see quite clearly that these targets are actually a very good indicator as to when we have a little bit of a breather. So as soon as we came up to the R1 line at 58,000 yesterday, look what's happened. We got rejected here at this point. It's basically gathering momentum to go on to our second target, which is the R2 line at 71,200. If you look in the past here, you can see quite clearly that whenever we come up to these lines, we get rejections and breathers here, here, then this became support, this became resistance. Look at this, right up to the line, and then we got rejected, came up to this line, got rejected before moving on. So these lines prove time and time again as extremely important and relevant to the price of Bitcoin. Currently, there's another pattern developing, which is a very bullish pattern, which I've shown you many times with other assets as well, like Zcash, Polkadot, as well as Neo. And it's this cup and handle pattern that's developing here. And as I've shown you previously, once we break the neckline here, which is basically the R1 line here, that will be the catalyst to propel us to the next target at R2. The same chart on the daily time frame can give us a better indication as to what's happening here. So we've come up to the R1 line got the target there. The next target at R2 is going to be the 71,200 line. But here is where the issue is going to be. As I said in the last video, I don't think we're going to get past the R2 line this month. We're going to have a rejection at this point because of the Bitcoin investor tool that we've said is aiming for around about the end of the month here. So for me, the price is going to hang around here for a little while, maybe another day or two, before we go up to this line here. As soon as we break this cup and handle pattern, we will be moving towards this target here at 71,200 by the end of this month. And I'm going to show you something which will set alarm bells to you. On the monthly chart, you can see quite clearly that we're coming up to the 95 level here for the RSI. So we're probably 1 or possibly 2 months away from hitting the top. Why is that significant? If you look left here, the top of the last bull market in 2017 corresponded with this top here. Before we reached the peak in December 2017, we had a previous peak to that a few months earlier. In the previous cycle in 2013-14, again, we got the 2 peaks here. So before we actually had the top for the bull market at that time, we reached another peak before that, around about 5, 6, 7 months before over here. So could it be that this is the first peak we're coming up to over here? The reason why we have to be very careful about this potential peak that's coming here is if you look to the first peak of this first cycle here, at that point, look what happened. We got to the peak here, which was this candle, and then from there, we got a correction here. Obviously, the second peak, we got the bear market correction. Then the first peak of the last bull market in 2017, we got to this candle here, corresponding to this peak, and guess what? We had a correction there. So what do you think would happen when we reach this peak here? The probability is that we're going to have another correction over here. Also, you may be counting the number of green candles here. So let's have a look at that, why it looks even more probable when you count the number of candles. So currently, remember, this is the monthly. If you look in history, the last 11 years of the Bitcoin price chart, you will notice that there are only 2 times when we've had 6 or more candles consecutively. First time we got that was here when we had the first time was here when we had 7 candles before we had this correction here, the red candle there. After this red candle, we got another 6 more candles over here. Currently, we've got 6 monthly candles over here. And it looks to me as though either the next month or the one after, there is a very high degree of probability that we're going to have a correction here. If you measure the levels of the corrections in April 2013, was 76% at the first peak over here. So this peak gave us 76% correction. The first peak here in the last bull market corresponds to this correction here, which was around 40%. So could it be that we're in for a 30, 40 or a 50% correction, even a 70% correction here? Only time will tell, but we need to be aware of it, especially knowing that we're coming up to the red line, which I've shown you repeatedly in the last few months. Now, this is so important, and that is the reason why I keep showing it to you, because we've now been rejected once here. And for me anyway, everybody has to make up their own mind. Is there a possibility that it will go up to this red line and go straight through? Of course there is a possibility. But what probability is there when you know that historically this red line is used normally as a resistant point? Because once it does get through, past the red line. We know through history if we look left here, let's take the pivots out. Unless you think that we're coming to the top of the bull market currently, then the chances are we're going to get rejected at the red line again very, very shortly. And as I've shown you already, the red line is at the 71,000 mark, which is exactly where the R2 line is on the pivots. So we must be aware of this. We're coming up to a resistant point, a very strong resistant point. Having a look at the monthly RSI channels, we can see that the peak is coming there as well. So we're due for a big correction any time, either next month or the one after. How you respond to that, I know some people I know are going to be taking out 10, 20, 30% of their positions with a view to buying back after the correction. That is up to them, and it's up to you what you want to do. My job is to just bring it to your attention. You can all make up your own minds depending on your strategy and your own risk-reward ratio. If you want to support the channel, then please click on any of my videos, and then below the videos you'll find a box called Show More, which gives you a description box. And in that description box is the affiliate link with Etoro that I have. So I partner up with Etoro because that's the main exchange I use for all my investments. These are the reasons why I tend to use Etoro. It's a very simple exchange to use in terms of depositing money and withdrawing the money, as well as trading if that's what you want to do, as well as for long-term investing, which is what I tend to do. So if you want to support the channel, please click on the partnership link, and then what you'll do is you'll get this box here, and then you can basically put your username, email and password and just fill in the form there. If you like any of my videos and you find value in them, then please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Now I'm going to show you a chart that nobody seems to be showing out there in any of the YouTube videos which I've seen. Maybe there are, but I haven't seen them. And that is called the Bitcoin Logarithmic Rainbow Chart, which is based on the Fibonacci tool. If you want to get this chart, all you have to do is type in Bitcoin Fibonacci, and then you'll see this here, the Bitcoin Fibonacci log regression. So when you click on that, this is what you'll get here. It's giving us quite a lot of information here. So first of all, it's telling us what the peaks were in the previous 3 bull markets. And according to this, if we were to top out in the next few months, let's say somewhere around here, then we would only get to $120,000, $130,000 here. So is that predicting a peak coming back, a short 4 to 6 month bear market before we move on to our $300,000 target here? So could there be 2 peaks? Only time will tell, but this is certainly not saying that we're going to be moving to $300,000 very, very shortly. And this price movement here to about $300,000 will take us to around about July 2023. So I just thought I would show you an alternative chart so that we can remain fluid and flexible in our approach. And so that whenever we see any changes in the charts, we can respond to them much more quicker rather than stick to a particular narrative that we get used to. The second thing this chart is saying is that if you look through the history of this chart and look at the bottom white line here, this is predicting the bottom of the bear markets in the past cycles very, very clearly. Look, every time the price takes a peak, it comes back to this white line. Peak here, white line. Peak here, white line. And again here. So this seems to be a lot of strong evidence that once we do meet our peak here, then we're going to be coming back to this line here as the bottom of the next bear market. And as you know, my prediction for the next bear market is next year around the $40,000, $42,000 mark. And this seems to be coming in line with that prediction that I made. So obviously, if you're looking to accumulate for the next cycle, then you need to know this chart here. Maybe this time next year, when we've reached the peak and come back down, we can wait for the price to come back to this bottom white line before accumulating for the next cycle going forward. If you found value in this information, then please hit a like and subscribe if you're new. Talking about two peaks, let me show you something very, very interesting. If you take this first cycle and do the bars pattern here, look how close this resembles the current market. This kind of rally that we've had since October the 8th, 2020, very closely resembles the first cycle that we had over here. And this pattern resembles this over here, and there is this pattern. So are we being guided in the current market to this pattern from 2013 to be replicated here in 2021? Only time will tell. I just thought that looked a bit interesting actually when I looked at this pattern here, that it could well be, as I've just said, that we could have two peaks, and this is the first peak and the second peak. So it may well be that we're coming up to the first peak, which could be the $71,000 mark here, or if it's going to go further up into April, we could end up with the next target, which I think is going to be around about the $84,000 mark, and maybe peak over there before coming back down with a correction and then going up to the next peak of the 300,000 in the next few months. And as you know, here at Wisdom Bites, we're people who are taking the longer term view, and every video I always show you the longer term picture so that you keep that in mind and not get sucked into the short term price movements. So I wanted to show you the hash ribbons, which I haven't shown you for many months now. Here they are. Now, there's some incredible information in this, so please take a note of this. Let me show you here that this was the peak of the first bull market there. And after the peak, have a look below here where the hash ribbons are. We got the first buy signal over here, which happened to coincide with the bottom of that bear market. So the first blue dot after the peak tells you the bottom of that market. When we got to the second peak in the second cycle here, look below here, the first blue dot here corresponded with the bottom of this bear market here. Thirdly, look at this. Our peak in the 2017 bull market, if you go below here, the first blue dot here corresponded with the low of the last bull market. We have to ignore the COVID-19 situation because that was a one-off event which may never ever occur again. So as you can see, the last peak, the first blue dot coincided with the low of this last bear market that we've just had. So what does that tell you? So planning forward, because we're people of long term, we're already planning, we're already saving, we're already accumulating in our own minds that once we make all the money over here in this bull market, when the market comes back down to the next bear market, we're already planning to accumulate around here. So after this peak that we get, wherever we get that over the next few months, you'll come back down to this hash ribbons, look for the first blue dot over here somewhere, and bingo, you will be able to identify the low of the next bear market. And if you marry the hash ribbons up, they make a very good marriage partner with the 200 weekly moving average. As you can see quite clearly, and I've shown you this many times before, that the 200 weekly moving average is the strongest indicator of the bottom of the bear markets. And as you can see, this happens to coincide with the first blue dot after the peak here, there, and the first blue dot over here. If you take out the COVID situation, this is our bottom of the market at this first blue dot here. So please make a note of this, that whenever we peak out somewhere over here, then the next bear market is going to be indicated by the 200 weekly moving average marrying up with the hash ribbons on the weekly chart. And if you found that information very valuable, then please smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Okay, so on to today's wisdom bite. Let's say you have 3 minutes and you have the opportunity to address the whole world. What would you say to the whole world in those 3 minutes? Leave your suggestions in the comments below, and it'll be very interesting to see what you would say to the world. Let me tell you what I would say to the world. Apart from telling them to buy Bitcoin and buying millions of Snickers bars with the profits, this is what I would tell the world. I would tell them to set goals for what they want to achieve in life. Goals means having a vision, having a target, having objectives. If you want to be successful in life, this is the magic word that will get you to where you want to get to. Without goals, you will not go anywhere because you'll get sidetracked in going sideways in life. Let me give you an analogy. Imagine an airport where an airplane is going from London to New York. Now the pilots have got their maps, they've got their fuel, they've got their passengers, they've got the aeroplane, and they've got themselves to fly from London to New York because they've got their goal, which is to get to New York, and they've got their vision of they know exactly how to get there with the map that they're going to be using. Obviously, without even thinking twice, you know that every single day flights will take off from London and they will arrive in New York. That's their destination. But now imagine they have no destination. They have no goal. The pilots don't know where they're going because they haven't been told where the airplane is supposed to be going to. What's going to happen to the airplane? It's going to be stuck in London Airport, isn't it? So why is it that 97% of people have no destination of where they're going in life? If you Google the number of people in the world who actually have goals, you'll see that it's only 3%. And guess what? It's these 3% that control 80% of the world's resources. So what should we do? Should we go and get goals? Of course we should. So people always ask me, how do you set goals? And for what? I'm going to enlighten you today. 30 years ago, I began my goal setting. And today I have virtually achieved everything I wanted to achieve. But obviously now I've got goals going forward, my next year goals, my next 5-year goals, my next 10-year goals. And I started off with these topics here, my career goals. At that time I was a medical representative for a pharmaceutical company, and I had to have my career goals of where I wanted to get to. I had attitude goals. Now you might think this is very strange, but everybody has to work on their attitude. I find, generally speaking, your attitude can get you into a lot of trouble and a lot of bother. And my own personal changes I needed to do was to make a decision in my mind that I will never be angry at anything. So my first goal, I remember 30 years ago, was that nothing will make me angry. And I wanted to slay the ego. I found that the ego, the personal ego, is a real problem for most people, and it was for me as well, going back 30 years. And I've been working on my attitude, my ego, my own behaviors, for 30 years, and I'm still learning and I'm still trying to change. I'm trying to chisel away all the rough edges. And if you look at the social goals, this is the types of friends that you keep, the places that you go to, the interests and hobbies that you have. And the health and fitness goals, the H&F here, this helped me to go to the gym and to actually keep very healthy and very fit by eating more nutritious foods. So I used to have health and fitness goals in terms of having my ideal weight. Then I had my personal development goals. I always wanted to learn the guitar, which I ended up doing on this journey with this particular goal. I wanted to learn more skills, more attributes, develop my character. So these personal development goals were really to try and make me have a much bigger and wider perspective of the world. Family goals were obviously whatever your family goals would be in terms of your children. I have 3 children and I wanted the best for them just like any other father. And so I set the goals, which again, I've achieved. I've got all my 3 children through university. And there were other goals that we achieved along the way. Then you have your financial goals. So 30 years ago, I set my financial goals. By 2005, I had achieved all my financial goals, which I'd set back in 1990. And so since 2005, I've had to reset my goals, getting higher and higher and better and better. Then I have my spiritual goals, and this is very personal to everybody. So this is just an idea of the types of goals that would help you to achieve the things. Because remember, just like the aeroplane, if you don't have any goals, if you don't have any objectives, if you don't have any targets, if you don't have a vision for your life, how can you get somewhere where you don't know where you're going? I'm going to leave you on this very important subject by giving you a very important quote, which says, if you don't actively try to create the kind of life that you really want to live, then by default, you will be forced to live the life that you really don't want. Okay, so we'll wrap it up there. Thank you once again for watching. If you found value in this video, then please do remember to like and subscribe and to turn on the notification bell. And if you want to leave any comments, questions, or suggestions, then leave them in the comments below. Until the next time, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.